Okay, well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this presentation for NCDOT OpenX Update Week. OpenX refers to all of the different Bentley Connect Edition brands. NCLUG is proud to partner with the North Carolina Department of Transportation to bring you these unit updates. This morning's webinar will be on OpenRoads updates from Roadside Environmental. Just a few housekeeping things before we get started. The webinar is a presentation, so all attendees will be muted and the webinar will be recorded. At any time during the webinar, you can submit your questions into the chat box, and as time allows, the NCLUG host will field questions to the presenter or during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. The chat function is for Q&A and only, and if you want to make other comments, please chat directly with that person. This will allow us to easily see the questions being asked, along with acting as a record for attendees to reference back to. NCLUG is offering PDH credits to those who have registered on the website for this event and attend the live meeting. No credit will be given to those who view the recorded presentation. Now I'd like to introduce Jeremy Goodwin and his team with the Roadside Environmental Unit as our presenters today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jeremy Goodwin. I'm with the NCDOT Roadside Environmental Unit. I am the State Erosion Control and Roadside Management Engineer, and one of the groups under me is our erosion control section, which is, of course, designing and reviewing erosion control plans. Alex, if you could go ahead and share your screen, get the presentation up. It has been a rather interesting progression from V8 to this. We've looked at a lot of different pathways, try to figure out how best to utilize some of the tools that are in the OpenRoads. Right now, we've got Alex Getty, who's doing most of our implementation work and a lot of our other efforts to bring the workspace up to date with ORD. We've also got Noel Ring, who's heading kind of our testing, as well as our implementation on ProjectWise and doing a lot of QA and QC. So rather than me sit here and regurgitate what they're doing, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to them and let Alex give you an update on the workspace. And then I believe Noel's going to give a little short presentation on some of the issues we've had with ProjectWise and where we're at with that. So anyway, Alex, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Jeremy. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes.
All right. Yes. Thank you. All right. So as Jeremy said, we're the erosion and sediment control group. We're the primary users in Roadside Environmental of the ORD workspace. And so I want to take you through what we were doing, what we're planning to do in the short term, like what we're currently working on, and then eventually what we want to do. So first, where we were. So I'm sure y'all remember using drawing cells, or those who are still doing designs, workaround designs are still using the drawing cells. They're not the smartest tool in the world. They're good for what as representation, but they're not very smart. Similarly, having to pick out the labels from the different libraries can just be a tedious long process, especially if you're a new user and don't exactly know what notes need to go where. It's going to be a lot of reading of the descriptions. And I'm sure those of y'all who have had to develop plans or review plans remember the design and computation manager. It was good for what it was at the time, but we're hoping with OpenRoads, and we'll show you, that there's a better way of doing things, especially since the old DNC manager was known for missing certain unchecked cells. Similarly, the level filters are no longer going to be the primary or primarily used in OpenRoads Designer. We have a new replacement for that. And I don't know how many of y'all have actually looked at the design scripts that we used to plot with iPlot, but the new pin tables are going to be a lot more useful. So where we are now, we've developed a whole feature definition library, and so that's allowed us to utilize the geometry tools, whereas before it was optional to use the geometry tools, especially for roadside environmental. Now we're really pushing towards that because these tools are just a whole lot more intelligent. So included in that intelligence, we have the quantities that we can actually assign to each feature definition. So each time we put down a basin, we can count that basin. And what y'all are seeing on the screen right now is more of a prototype. We'll rename stuff as needed, but it gives you the idea that every time we put down a basin, we're going to count that basin. And so at the end, then we can export that to an Excel sheet, to a CSV file, and decide or count up how many basins, how many rock checks, how many waddles do we have on the project. Similarly, how many linear feet of, or how many sections we need for silt fence, and even potentially how much matting, how much grass cover we need. So leading into that, we do have the ability, and we are working on this right now, of actually drawing matting and grass cover. For now, we will still be using the matting summary sheets, but this will help to verify that the matting summaries are at least somewhat close to accurate. And if you see the civil quantities section on the right side, that's going to be one of our main references for matting summaries. And one thing that we are really hoping to be able to utilize is element annotation. Right now it has some restrictions, but we see this as being a very important tool for us to speed up plan development or plan revision, especially with the interchangeability of a feature definition. Then if the designer says it's like a type B protection, and we say, no, we want it to be type C, then it's going to be a lot easier for the designer to just go back, change the feature definition, and bam, you get that C label. Also for basins, no longer do you have to go searching for those notes. With the element annotation tool, you just select the basin and your note is going to appear directly there. So with the feature definitions and with the information that we've built into them, we're able to develop item type reports. And so this is going to be, at least for the foreseeable future, our reference on knowing where, or referencing against the quantities. And then, as I had mentioned before, the iPlot file and the level filters are kind of combined into these pen tables. And I remember Roadway talking about this. I'm sure other units have as well. But pen tables are going to be incredibly useful for what we do, especially since we can just develop different pen tables for CNG plans, pen tables for final grade plans. We can develop pen tables for intermediate phase if that was ever something we had to do, but as of now we are not. But it gives us a lot of flexibility and it makes it a lot quicker and a lot easier. And then similarly to Roadway, we have sheeting, and this is just going to make things a lot easier combining the sheeting with the pen tables, and you're going to be able to just spit out printable plans in no time. But we are still going to be using our spreadsheets, our basin designers. They're going to be still quite necessary. maybe in the future these could get built in, but that is speculative, and at this point we can't commit to any of that. So the tried and true files are the way that we're going to keep going, at least designing basins. But in the future, we intend to have the ability to design basins in a custom manner. That way we're going to get more accurate quantities in terms of earthwork and storage capabilities. This will also help with potential conflict resolution in case a basin, and this has happened before, where a basin conflicts with a utility that's on a site. In theory, these 3D basins are going to give us that kind of information. And similarly with 3D cells, we hope to be able to show these on a plan to give us an idea of any potential conflicts. And as you can see there, we have a very, very rudimentary prototype silt fence, and we're hoping to develop more 3D cells in the far future. And I can't reiterate this enough, your input is critical. I'm sure some of y'all have, those who look at our workspace or have been waiting for an update, have seen that we haven't put out a whole lot. We are intending to put out a more complete, not quite so much piecemeal workspace, because we want to have something that's a foundation from where to build. We're concerned that if we piecemeal our releases, then it's possible some users may get comfortable with what we've put out, only for us to decide that we need to change it. We just don't want to end up have that happening. And now I want to show a video. Let me end the slideshow. I'll stop sharing and then share this. Can everybody hear that before I resume it?
I think if we're gonna zoom a little bit better.
That might, I think that's the best I can do.
If you reshare your screen, there should be a toggle where you can say show use computer audio. You want to just stop sharing and then try sharing again. There should be an option to check for audio.
System audio. First, I want to draw a drainage area. One of the first things we do. Everybody can hear that?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. And the nice thing about it in OpenRoads Designer is that we can get an automatically calculated area. So here I'm just drawing the 4 lines, and then I'm going to complex these. So I'll do it all in the same direction. Got to make sure that feature definition is correct though. Otherwise, if it sets to no feature definition, you might not get what you hope to get out of it. So 3, 4, accept it, and there it is. So we'll click on it, get some properties, look over to the right, and there you see in the middle geometry section, a calculated area and perimeter. And so we've made adjustments not just to the lines, but also to the point geometry. And that's been a really nice thing. It's made the workflow a lot quicker, and it makes it a lot easier to make adjustments later. So those of you that receive our reviews, it's just a lot easier to go back in and edit it. So here I'm showing a list that we have. Now you may notice that I've got other workspace folders in here as well. That's just what I'm doing. The workspace that y'all will receive will be a condensed roadside environmental only workspace. Let's drop a waddle in there. Let's put one over here. Now keep in mind, this isn't actually any sort of engineering design. We're just having fun. So I have two, but let's say I wanted to change one up. So we'll just click on it. And we'll go over here to feature definition, and then we'll just change the feature definition. Simple as that. And we've created the cell count item type. So right now it's got count, information if it's a basin. That count will help us with quantities later. I want to show you basins because we have some information or some features associated with basins that we believe will make things go a lot easier. But first I'll go ahead and drop one in. I'll rotate it. You see it's a skimmer basin. Yes, it's not oriented the right way. Now we'll go over and we're going to actually annotate this basin. So we just use the annotate element tool, click on it, accept, and there you go. Now we attach these labels to the different basins to make it easy. So if you have a skimmer basin, you're going to get the skimmer basin note. So you just edit it. You know that every basin will have its note. It's going to make things a lot easier. Now you don't have to go back and search for the note. It's right there attached. Now we do run into an issue with scaling. So as you can see, I'm going to try to double it. And I click it and it reverts back. And the issue is because we're trying to scale these cells. And right now, Bentley doesn't allow us to do that, though Bentley has talked about parametric cells in the future. So right now, the way to work around this is to copy it and scale it. So we're copying it. We're going to select it and we're going to scale it. So technically what happened when we copied it is it's no longer the feature, the point geometry. Now it's like your old drawing cells. And look at this label. So this label, unlike some of the civil labels that you've seen from other units, our labels currently do not rotate automatically. They don't rotate with the view. And yeah, we can use the civil labeler, but our what we really want to be able to do is to take the cells that we already have and have those rotate with view as well. And so that's something that has been requested. But on the right, you can compare the properties and see. So we've got the point there from the original basin. Click on the copied scaled basin. And you can see up there it says annotation cell. So they are technically different. However, you will see also that it has the information, the item types that we attached to it before. So it is still serviceable. It is still usable. It's just not going to be the exact type of basin or the exact type of point geometry that we're hoping, which for right now is fine. We're going to find workarounds if that does become a problem, though. The nice thing is, since we have those item types, we can build a report. So I'm going into this report. Yeah, I haven't labeled anything, so it defaults to all untitled. We'll add the report definition. You can see as I scroll down the different options. And here we'll select our item type. So I've got cell count and distance. Cell counts for the point geometry, distance is for the linear geometry. Of course, we can always add more. These item types were developed in 10.09. We haven't made any changes since 10.10 was introduced. We just adopted those, adapted them over. But I'm going to build a test report. Sorry, my computer is a bit slow, so I do apologize. So we go into the column, and we care about cell count. Let's just go ahead and add everything. We'll preview our table. So as you can see, I had manually adjusted that skim basin 1 cell. I changed it to the fact that it is a basin and manually entered the basin area. Once we do get into 3D modeling, that can be developed automatically. As you can see at the bottom there, it's shown both skim basin 3 twice. So that's one from the original point geometry and one from the copied annotation cell. So we'll click on the tiered skimmer basin just to show you that it was picking up everything. So that tiered skimmer basin, that skimmer basin down there, and I manually entered that. You see the 2 skimmer basins up there. And now I think it's ready to show y'all how to do the sheeting. So right now for this test purpose, we're not ready to show you the sheeting just yet, but that will be available pretty soon. For this purpose, I'm just going to use a test sheet that I developed some time back. For all you roadway engineers out there, please forgive this horrific alignment that I've drawn in. It was just for test purposes. So we'll draw our boundary. We're going to start back here. And since it's got default 20 boundary chords, I'm just going to change it to 0. As you can see, there's the EC sheets from the EC Test 3 drawing seed plan. Again, that's not the one that any of y'all will receive. We'll just go to the sheet. So as you can see, we have our outline there. And now we'll take a look at the printing. So we have some pin tables that we have developed. And I'm just off screen populating our general pin table. So I know it's hard to see, but in that preview window, you can see that everything else is blacked out or hidden. The only things that are showing are the EC devices. So we've got our purple, our green, and our orange. Now we'll go back to the design view. One thing that we will be working on in the future is the surface templates, and that will definitely be of huge benefit to us. I've already drawn one. That little purple zigzag pattern, that's actually supposed to be a little bit of grass. So let's find that. There we go. There's the 3D model. You click on the surface grass and it has the sloped area, the planar area, volume if you care, but it is a standard depth. So it's just the surface area times that standard depth that you specified. So yeah, that's what we've been working on. Thank you. All right, so that was the video that I wanted to show. Up next is Noel Ring to tell you about our ProjectWise work.
Hear me.
I could barely hear you, Noel.
Yeah, there's some audio issues there, Noel. I was thinking the same thing.
I'm not sure how to do that. I've turned up my volume, but I'm not
Word.
sure that affects my.
Yeah, we're hearing you now. Okay, on a scale of like 1 to 10, you're low, maybe like a level 3 or something. But we heard you, Noel.
Does anyone know? I don't know how to turn up my microphone without just turning up my.
In the application, the 3 ellipses at the top, have you clicked that and went to device settings? And there should be a sliding bar with the microphone.
I see the sliding bar, but it doesn't appear to have any effect when I change.
Are you using a headset or your computer?
Headset. Microphone.
That's a good point.
It'll-
There, you can input.
I can't seem to turn up my volume.
So what
What's
is
that?
the headset or your computer as your input?
And you were just louder too, Noel, whatever's happening. I think you're pretty audible.
Jeremy's trying to assist me.
There you go. We could hear that pretty well.
Yeah, he says he can hear better now.
Mhm.
I think so. All right, and you can see my screen, is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yep, we can see your screen and hear you pretty well.
Sorry about that. This is first time I've actually presented and I can't remember what. So I'll go ahead and proceed. So again, you already know I'm Noel Ring. I've been working in the soil and water section for about 16 years. And as well, some of the previous presenters during the OpenX week have expressed, working with MicroStation V8 for that many years has made it somewhat difficult to adapt to ORD, but we have been making some progress. I'm going to just give you a brief summary of our work in ProjectWise. We got upgraded to 10.10, I believe it was December. And so at that point, we were also waiting for Hydro and Roadway to get their items situation where we could begin work. Obviously, our plans are dependent upon theirs as far as placing our devices and such. So in ProjectWise, we've been working on the U33, 34B, and 36, 33. That's right. So we have been testing an example of U36, 33. After we did get upgraded to 10.10, we discovered that there were some issues with our cell libraries and our design libraries that were preventing us from doing much work. But after talking with Vasim and Elizabeth Lee, she was able to help us get straightened out with our cell libraries, and we're actually able to begin experimenting and doing some testing. And at our last OpenX week, at that point, we were only using element templates to place our version control devices. But at this point, we're now able to use the geometry tools Alex spoke about, place both line and point EC devices. We can use element annotate in the drawing production tab to place labels. And that label can be moved once it's placed to a more convenient location, so it can be avoid other interference with other features on the plan. We have been having some issues or challenges in ProjectWise with getting an arrow on our leader line with the label. I haven't figured out how to sizing is being a problem. The arrow has a tendency to come in really large. So still working on that. And as Alex expressed, we're not able to scale our basins as the point geometry at this time. So unless, as he said, you copy it and resize it, it won't reflect the size that will be in the feed. Testing in U33, 34B had some similar, but so far I haven't figured out what is causing the differences in our symbology. We have some cells that are coming in without the color that we assign to them, and so it does appear that they retain their information. The ones that are appearing white on the screen supposed to be orange, and in the final phase they appear to still be in the final phase, but just don't retain their appearance as they should. And in the excuse me, in the previous slide, you could see that the colors are, for some of those same devices, the colors are appropriately signed. So, just another challenge that I ran into experimenting is placing our cell we have for special fence. When I try to connect the silt fence to it, it tries to snap to the center of it or to one side, and tempting to snap to one of the arms. It seems to be resistant. Haven't figured that out yet, but still working on that. We previously used SmartLine to draw silt fence and snapped it to the arms, so to speak, of the special fence symbol. But in ORD, we're placing each segment of silt fence. And like I said, the snapping requires some patience. We are currently, our cells are two-dimensional. We have done, as Alex said, a little bit of experimentation with the silt fence, getting a 3D representation of that, but we're still going to have to work on building three-dimensional representations of our other 2D devices. And basically, we're going to continue working, discovering solutions to the issues we're having. And for now, that is what I have for an update on ProjectWise. Thank you.
This is Jeremy. Thank you all very much. Thanks, Alex, Noel, for presenting that. I believe there's a few questions, so try to answer those.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy, Alex, and Noel. If anybody has any questions, this is a great time to raise your hand or type it in the chat box. I think Alex had already answered one question about once a basin is copied and scaled, do we lose functionality for quantity calcs, lose ability to come back later and change level or phase? And Alex has answered that in the chat if nobody has seen it.
Yeah, to follow up on that, we are waiting for Bentley to release parametric cells. We don't have a concrete timeline on when that's supposed to be happening, but from what it sounds like, we're not the only unit awaiting that functionality in OpenRoads Designer. But once we do have parametric cells, we don't have to even consider this anymore. It would allow us to scale the basin while retaining all of its feature definition properties.
Okay, in the chat, it's been asked, what's the schedule or time frame for switching to ORD for consultant submittals?
And
Jeff?
yeah, I was about to chime in. This is Jeff. That's a great question. And the department is trying to tackle that on a project by project basis for a while here until we have all disciplines tried and true through our testing projects. They have their workflows down and we feel comfortable as a department to fully transition over. We're not requiring our firms at this point. Again, at the end of the day, per our contract, when we let our projects, our design projects, the firms have the option with the project engineer to come up and design using our current tool set, SS2, SS4, V8i, or ORD. We're certainly, we have a number of what we call true pilot projects where firms are using ORD to do the design work for letting. And we have some of those starting to let this month, and we have several slotted for this calendar year. However, it is not required at this point. So at such time down the road, as NCDOT finalizes all of our workflows, our ability to use the software and exactly how we need it to do, have our instructions and requirements down for our ORD. Then, like I said, when we let projects, we may specifically require that firms use ORD to do the design work, but at this time it is optional, is the long answer. And as far as time frame, we're trying to make the best decision for our taxpayers at this point. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we want to be an efficient, smooth transition. So we don't want to slow down or hamper any of the design projects where we have a viable tool in our toolbox at this point. So that's kind of a long answer to, it's undetermined. We're trying to make the right call on when, but at this point, all our new projects that are coming out, essentially photogrammetry, location surveys with our base mapping work, we're starting off in ORD is the plan. There are some exceptions. And then as we move forward, like I said, the existing projects that are underway, that's the more challenging piece. So figuring out if they're kind of about approximately 25% down, if they're further on the design phase, depending on where they're at, again, from a macro business type sense for the department, do we want to go back and change over the design work? When does it make sense? Or do we just finish up in our existing software? So it's going to be a transition for a while here. We're just trying to make the right call. So that's a long answer, but we can field other questions around that. But that's what I got for now. And as we wait for other comments or questions, I will state, like I have in the other sessions and the opening piece, that if a firm is interested in using ORD for the design work for projects that they're involved with, to please discuss that with the project engineer in either the 14 divisions or the central work, because it is an option and we are considering it on a per project design basis, just to say it out loud.
Just to note, while we wait and see if any more questions come in, Ian has put the link to get PDH credit in the chat box if you haven't seen it. And if you have any questions about ORD implementation outside of these presentations, I will put the DOT email for that in the chat box.
Thank you, Dana. And we certainly welcome questions and input. Again, we don't have a silver bullet, step-by-step plan to get all this done. So we're absolutely looking for feedback and input from the industry as we continue to figure this out. Dan, if there aren't any other questions, we can certainly adjourn, and we do have time this afternoon for other questions as well. I do want to pause and thank Jeremy and the team for a fantastic presentation. Really appreciate all that Roadside Environmental is doing.
One more question is, are you preparing any EC training at this time?
We currently do not have anything developed. We're still working on our workflow and documentation as we get this progress, or as soon as we progress. So we should have something out before we roll out the full package, so that everybody will have some guidance and some documentation on how it's going to be implemented. But if you've been doing this work before, I don't think you'll see a massive change at this point. Like I said, a lot of the stuff's still going to be done with outside computation on spreadsheets and that kind of thing. The challenge is to see if we make sure we have the same functionality we have with V8 and Geopack, and being able to, at a minimum, have that same ability to do the same work, with the existing formats that we had. But like I said, Alex has explored some other avenues of getting some things done and some time savings so that maybe we can expedite our design. It's still in the works. So
Yeah, and to add on to that, so I've been developing some sort of personal documentation and guidance, but over the past couple of years, I've noticed that even if I revisit a document that's 3 months old, by that point, I've usually changed something or figured something out that's better. And so we don't want to send out the documents or any sort of training yet, only to tell you 3 months from now, that's not the way we're going to be doing it. We just want to make it as easy on y'all's end as possible.
Great. I think if there are no other questions, stay tuned for the next presentation. I think it's construction. And then there's a Q&A wrap up this afternoon. Thank you again, Jeremy, Alex, and Noel for a great presentation.
Thank you, everybody.
thank you very much for having us.
Yes, thanks everyone. Great job.